Jesus has shared his final Passover meal with his disciples. They'd been gathered in that upper room when Jesus had plainly told them that he was going to be betrayed by somebody close to him. Judas had asked, "Is it I, Rabbi?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. And they'd gone out to the Mount of Olives on the outskirts of Jerusalem, and the disciples had pledged their undying allegiance, how they would be there right until the bitter end. Jesus had gone off alone to pray, and he told them, "Keep watch." The disciples slept. And then they came out of the darkness, led by Judas. They came with clubs and swords, maybe not knowing who or what they would find. And then the twisted kiss, not a symbol of friendship, but of betrayal. And Jesus is seized. Peter draws his sword, trying to take control with violence instead of trust. And Jesus rebukes him again. "Do you not think that I could call down legions of angels if the battle ahead could be won by force? With strength, with power, with might? Do you not see that a reliance on violence is part of the problem? Every time we respond with violence or hatred, cross-word, then the cycle just continues. An eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind." So the disciples run, leaving Jesus behind in the clutches of his persecutors. But here's the hard truth, the bitter pill that we all have to swallow. We are there on the Mount of Olives as all of this unfolds. Maybe we haven't taken 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus like Judas did. Every time we've stayed silent when we should have spoken up, there we are in this scene. Maybe we weren't there running away, leaving Jesus alone like the disciples did, but every time we have got uncomfortable or placed our safety over sacrifice, our convenience over compassion, then we too have said, "I do not know this man." When we have ignored the poor, or when we've got involved with gossip or backbiting, when we have looked the other way while injustice is being done, these are the times when we have lived like we don't need the grace that Jesus offers. And all of this, all of the betrayal, all of the abandonment, Jesus knew all of this. He knew how the story was going to unfold. From that moment of unity gathered for that final Passover meal, to those declarations of undying allegiance, to those final moments when all had fled, and when Jesus stood there utterly abandoned, left alone to travel the road laid out before him. And he stayed. He didn't resist. He didn't call down legions of angels. He surrendered. Not just to the baying mob, but to the mission ahead of him. He surrendered himself to love a world that wouldn't, that couldn't love him back, knowing that this was the only way. Looking at each and every one of us as we scatter and we run, and yet still loving us. Holding each of us in his gaze, knowing that we are sinful and broken and frail and human, and yet still loving us. Knowing the horrors that still lay in wait, the beatings, the torture, the mocking taunts, the cross, and yet still loving us. That's the beauty here, in the midst of the betrayal. As each of us leaves Jesus to suffer and to die, yet he still loves us. We are the ones who ran, who failed, who denied, but still he looks at each and every one of us, and still he loves us. Amen.